Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. As-salatu salam ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. My dear brothers and sisters, today we will look at the situation with Niger, and if anyone shows up today on this work day, they can participate in this discussion if they have questions. And I'd like to give my felicitations. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh lil-ikhwani wati fi din. Salamu ala mani taba huda lil-ikhwani wati fi Afrika, Europa, wa America, wa Caribbean, wa kulli makan. Halim wa salim bikum. Anjurama, my dear brothers and sisters in the full big community. And the situation in Niger is very fluid, and it has a lot of players in it. And of course, we have news that has disaffected Niger in particular. And so I wanted to touch bases with you about this issue and keep this back in the forefront in your mind, because as you heard me say many times, the situation in Africa also affects the black man in America, the black man in the Caribbean, wherever he may be. And so we're all interlinked. We're all suffering, and we're all colonized. We're not free. Irrespective of where you may be, you're not free. So when we have a problem, even if you consider it small, but it encompasses the brother who's sitting in Los Angeles or the brother who's sitting in Kingston, Jamaica. We're all disaffected by it. So let's get started on this, brothers and sisters. You know, I had put a couple of questions out there for people to think about, and ask the questions about can Nigeria junta survive? That's one of the things I said. Should the junta relinquish power and restore President Bazoum? I put those questions out there. I want you to think about, and you can answer that if you feel that you want to, and give me your input in that. You know, anytime you overthrow a president, prime minister, whomever is running the country, it's a serious matter in Islam. Very, very serious matter. Irrespective if they are governing by what Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has revealed, or they're governing by democratic ways and means. And it takes on a lot of ramifications, as we can see now. And let's look at some things here where, well, I got to fly. This is a bad time for the fly to come around me now. We have ramifications here that we should look at. The situation with Niger has been disaffected by the current events. U.S. sanctions. Now here we go again, brothers and sisters. In order for the U.S. to control us here in Africa, they want us slave and yes, a boss to them, period. They don't take kindly that Africans across the board, irrespective of African Arab or Tuareg or the African black man, makes no difference. They want us, they want to control us, and they want to be able to take our resources from us anytime they want. They want to still indirectly rule us and therefore keep us impoverished. What has happened now, they're starting to see the light where black leaders are now vocal in their disapproval of the heavy-handedness of U.S. policies. And now is you starting to see them crop up everywhere. They can't kill everybody. See, so now you have leaders who are talking against it. Enter the fray is another Tubab power, the Russians. The Russians have gone about entering Africa in a different mindset. They did not come into the fray and begin to traffic black women. They didn't enter the fray by coming to you and me telling us to kiss their boots. They didn't come in with overt racism like the Americans do when they come in to visit an African leader, as though they dirty themselves by our presence. Here they come to this continent, and you see the way they act towards us. It's not a friendly relationship. It's not a brotherly relationship. It's a slave master with his field hand relationship, essentially what this is. The Russians, when they come, it's not like that. As you heard me talk about many times, all you have to do is pull up pictures and videos in YouTube, and you see what I'm talking about. You see a difference between, you see joking, laughing, and so forth. When you see the Americans, you see the African leaders have a stoic face, because you can tell they don't like what is happening to them, and they're being pressured and they're being threatened, to do what the Americans tell them to do. So the U.S. sanctions now has been proposed to go after African states who have influences, with the Russians, which will hurt the Africans, those who they feel they want to punish. This is the time now, brothers and sisters, we have to buckle down and stop taking their security loans and everything else from the United States. It's time for that, because they have veto power over you. And we have one lingering problem that we have to solve, brothers and sisters. And I'm a remnant of that. We have now our brothers and sisters leaving the hellhole they call United States. They're leaving other hellholes in Europe and other places now to return back to their homeland. We have to figure out something, because our brothers here on the continent have to do something in order to make the reparations, because we are returning. And it's no fault to us that my ancestors were taken and brought into the United States. So we have to look at those things. But the sanctions that are proposed now by the U.S. is very dirty when you think about it, because they're punishing us. Here, they have a devilish relationship with us, the U.S., a devilish relationship for 400 years, taking slavery, taking our wealth, threatening, killing our leaders, now training some of our young leaders to overthrow the governments. Okay, all of those things like this is that shows they have no respect for us at all. And even some of them well-meaning two-bob Americans have even told on the government, saying it's them who revealed, yes, we're training your people. We're training your people to come back to Africa to overthrow your governments. See, let me give a shout out, see who's here. Bina, how you doing, my dear brother? Bina, I'm not sure. Oh, yeah, okay, Bina, yeah. How you doing, my dear brother? How you doing? Or I'm not sure if this is a Bina there in the United States. I'm not sure which, because there's another Bina also there in the United States, but I'm not sure. But welcome. Thank you for coming, Anjarama. The situation with the sanctions is a serious matter, because we're already hurting. We have loans with China. We have loans with the IMF. We have World Bank loans. All of this stuff is killing us here on the continent. And we're going to have to do something to stymie that. I propose in this regard is that we have mineral wealth. We stop to give this to them in return and sell it back on the market and tell them to wait. And then we pay off these loans and throw them out. With all the mineral wealth we have, we will not be able to spend all this money in our lifetimes, and maybe many generations to come. And we use that wealth to empower our people and to enrich us. And now also in this situation, we have the alleged killing alleged killing of the Wagner chief, and that's now making the circuit and whatnot. How that affects the Africans? Well, those groups, the Wagner group, in my personal opinion, I had a discussion with this with another person. I believe that it's going to make Wagner group very, very, I mean, more ruthless in its hold, because now they're going to look at, especially if it's been proven that the Russian government was behind the killing of the chief and one of his top lieutenants. If it's alleged that the Wagner group is not going to want to go back home because they feel they will probably be assassinated, so they're going to really be ruthless to take hold in Africa and call African states their own. They're going to carve them out and then run them. This is what I look at. This is the way I see it. Many say that the Wagner group will be disbanded. It may be disbanded there in Russia, but they are gaining income from our diamonds and gold in particular. And the African government's paying them 10 million US dollars per month for their services. See, so I'm of the belief that they're going to be far more dangerous and they're going to be more ruthless to take over Mali, take over Burkina Faso, take over Niger in particular. They've already taken over Central African Republic. They're going to have their stay and try to have their way inside Sudan as well. But I don't believe they'll be able to run Sudan, because Sudan is a very big place. But on the same token, it's going to be far more difficult. But they'll have an easier time to run Niger and to run Burkina Faso. But on the same token, we'll have to see what the Burkina Faso new young president will say about that when he gets pressured by the Wagner group to say, look, I want you to turn over my military. We'll see what he's made of then, because he's talking good now and talking rough. But we'll see what happens when ultimatums are given to him. Will he relinquish his military to the Tuba Wagner group? And speaking of the Wagner group, as you heard me talk about before, some of their top lieutenants have neo-Nazi ties. As far as I'm concerned, brothers and sisters, I don't want to deal with a neo-Nazi Tuba. I don't have no treaties with him. I don't even want to invite the bastard to where I live. He will not eat at my table. And I'll try to make sure, if I was in charge of the place, I'll make sure that he would not be able to eat at any table in the country where I'm at. He take his neo-Nazi racism into America, that's okay. Let the brothers deal with it over there. But now you come here, I don't want to deal with it. That's just my personal opinion, what I feel about that. The African scholars are trapped in asking Niger to adopt Sharia law, because, as you see, when they have not asked their individual states to do the same. What I mean by here is this. You take a scholar there in Nigeria. He goes into Niger and he proposes that that now you have the opportunity, why don't you go in to implement Sharia law? Perhaps the leadership there will say, yes, but you're from Nigeria. Why don't you go to your president and ask him to do the same? I'm just throwing those things out, because it's very difficult to ask for somebody to do something that you have not asked where you're living to do. And so I look at, and also in this mix, the modern Muslim states leaders in the Sahel in particular should be challenged. If ECOWAS is talking, they want democratic. We know it's not talking. They're democratic, period. And you heard me talk for weeks about what Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has said about democratic ways and means. Now, if the Niger government comes back to ECOWAS and say, we're going to implement Sharia law, I'm curious to see what the ECOWAS will say. because they're saying, no, we want democratic ways and means reestablished back inside Niger. But what if now the junta turn around and say, you know what, we're going to go to Sharia law? I'm curious to see what the president of Nigeria is going to say. I'm curious to see what the Gambian president is going to say. I'm curious to see what the Senegal president is going to say. How about Mauritania, what he's going to say? I would pressure them if they say this, if they say, I got him out, the president of Niger, the ex-president, I threw him out because one, he gave away our wealth. Second, 95, you heard me talk last week, 95% of the wealth is leaving into the hands of the Tuba. 5% is only being retained inside Niger. Niger depends on Nigeria and others for many subsidies that they shouldn't have to be depending on, because they don't have the money, because all the money is gone. See? And plus, they threw him out because he allowed foreign bases to run roughshod through his country. Even with that said, the Mujahideen still controls large portions of Niger, irrespective that the Americans and the French are there, and even the Russians. See? So I would love to see something like this, where Niger now says, okay, no, we were talking about this, we were talking about maybe doing this, and maybe we were going to do another thing here, but I'm going to issue a memorandum to tell everybody I'm going to go to Sharia law. Because the proposed 3 year, excuse, that's a mistype there, 3-year civilian rule, the ECOWAS said no to it. The Niger government says we're going to implement this slow change. Now, what's the problem with that? There is some problems. I'll get into that about when you talk about civilian rule, because there's an innate problems when you have that. Again, if ECOWAS and they tell them they want the Sharia law, I'm curious to see what they would say. What will be their collective response? Their response could trigger problems in their home states. Now, I always use Nigeria because it's a very, very powerful bloc inside West Africa, but in Africa in particular. If suddenly Niger says we're going to start a 3-year program now for the Sharia law, and what if the Nigerian government say no to it, that you will go and you will re-implement the democratic ways and means? That's apostasy, brothers and sisters. I will tell you that straight out. Any Muslim who goes after another Muslim to tell him to leave Sharia law and go to another governance other than Allah's, what has been revealed by Allah, that's apostasy. See, so it could trigger problems, because in the northern tier of Nigeria, we know what's going on there. And they do have the Sharia. And you have a home base of scholars there. You have Mujahideen groups. You have the Fulani herdsmen there. You have other smaller militias. You have a tinderbox of situations, problems of ethnic strife in northern Nigeria. But you have groups calling for the Sharia law. It could be a lot of problems if this happened, if Niger does say, I want Sharia law. Now, I'm going to tell you why, when you talk about civilian rule, why it's a problem. And we'll just concentrate on the Sahel. We're not talking about in northern, but it's the same formula. The Muslim youth is the major catalyst to insecurity. You say, whoa, whoa, hey, now, wait a minute. What do you mean by that? Because our youth are not schooled. They're not trained Islamically. Because of the worldwide media, they watch the disbelievers and the way they act. They see whoredom. They see nakedness. They see football. They see music personalities. So our youth imitate that. Collectively, they don't know what they really want. Because when you talk to 10, you bring 10 young black men and women into a room and ask them about the democratic procedures that should be initiated. You'll get 10 different distinct answers. And no government can comply. They have to comply with something by certain rules. But you'll have maybe the sisters may say, look, I'm a Muslima, but I want to dress like Beyonce inside the United States. You may have another sister that says, look, I want to openly date. I want to openly have sexual relations. You may have another young brother say, look, I want to openly smoke and drink without having the Hezbollah come after me. This is the way I see democratic ways and means. See? So there's a lot of problems with that. This is why civilian rule doesn't work. Sudan tried it here. Remember a couple of years ago, it doesn't work because even though you handpicked 50 young, bright Nigerians in particular, youth, they're not going to see eye to eye on how the government should be run. And this is why when you go to civilian rule, this is a problem. Then we have the other youth, since they don't have education, since they don't have worldly education, they don't have Islamic education. Their way of life and their livelihood is very, very small. So they go to criminality, like robbing and kidnapping, to address their grievances. As we know what's happening in Nigeria in particular. See, so the civilian rule is not a good policy, nor is democratic ways and means in voting is not. If you look at the model of the Islamic model, the people will have their voice, but we would nominate certain individuals, okay? And then we would have a body, a shura council, and they would then make the decision. Now that we have, in a prime example, like I was telling you, brothers and sisters, we got a glimpse of how powerful our Islamic body is. This is just a small pigeon of what is happening in Nigeria. Well, we got bringing brothers in the Gambia and Ghana. They're all through the Sahel, in Mauritania, even in Niger, and even in Burkina Faso. We got brilliant scholars and statesmen. All of these brothers, I wish they had a Sahelian ulama, and I know they do. They have a collective body, because I tried to join it one time, but they said since I didn't live in the West African corridor, that they could not let me in. But we have brilliant scholars. They should be instrumental in helping to run the government. Because again, why you say that? Because these men are having a covenant with Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And their covenant is with the book of Allah and with the sunnah of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, which gives them an advantage. They have instant credibility and respect. See, and to prove my point, prove my point. When the Nigerian ulama, the scholars came, the cool leaders met with them and gave them reasons why they snubbed the ECOWAS delegation. What have I been telling you guys for months now? Remember we were talking about this issue again? When you have bandit groups, you have criminality groups, you have officials, modern Muslims and so forth and so on. When you send essentially who they consider hypocrites to come to make negotiations, it's already a recipe for disaster. They told them why they rejected the ECOWAS. Now, this is what they're telling our ulama. Because why? They could tell them the truth because they respect these brothers. This is why, again, I said this is important for us to start to include everywhere. I don't care where you at. I don't care if you're in Senegal. I don't care if you're sitting in Guinea-Conakry or Guinea-Bissau, or you sitting in Liberia or Sierra Leone. We should have a Islamic Ashura Council around all of our presidents, because these brothers matter. And when you have disturbances, insurgencies, the insurgents generally will listen to our scholars. They will not listen to the modern Muslim. They just won't. And this is some of the problems that we have, is because the modern Muslims can't come to these guys. Why? Because these people say, these Mujahideen groups say, hey, look, I want the Sharia law. And so the ECOWAS groups, they cannot come in there and talk because they don't want the Sharia. So automatically there you already got a problem. And when they come in, how do they dress them? They dress them like Tubab Africans. They don't dress them like Muslims. They don't come and say, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, brother, how you doing? Salam alaikum. They don't dress them like that. Our scholars do. They come to them and talk to and use the words of Subhanahu wa ta'ala and greeting their brother. This is the big difference between them and our leaders, because our leaders are modern and gone. They're away from all the Islamic principles and etiquette. And this is why we have this problem. The Islamic education, worldly education among our youth are so weak. Is it their fault? I would say no, because the government malfeasance. We should be spending money on making sure that our children are educated in Africa, because we have to have education. We have to have Islamic education, and we should have also worldly education as well, because we have to meet the demands of the world, because the world is now it's involved in a lot of education. When we have people who can't understand what's going on outside past their feet, this is what we have with many of our youth today. And they score low when you talk about worldly education. We have a large portion of our youth don't even go to school. We have a large amount of our youth who do not even pick up the Quran. They can't even tell you about the Prophet. The only thing they can say, I'm Muslim. And others say they're Christian. But if you ask them, you say you Christian, you ask them about Jesus, who they say they follow, they can't give you a lot of specifics about him either. And a lot is because our government malfeasance. They did not prepare our children. They did not put education in forefront to educate our future generations. This benefits the Tubab, because the Tubab comes in and he begins to manipulate, because the people who are coming up don't have the ways and means to deal with a skilled thug Tubab. See? So, however, the following youth figures, now, if we want to test him on football, oh man, they can give you ins and outs on that. You're going to test him about music. You want to ask him about the personalities, especially in the United States, rap groups and all this other stuff. And some of the rap groups that they have now in Africa, they score high on that. You want to talk about movies and movie stars, they score high on that. If you want to talk about Facebook genre, they score high on that. But when you ask them, you pull out a world map and ask them, where is Russia? Where is Belarus? Where is Los Angeles, California? Many can't even tell you where it's at. How about you ask them, where's Brazil? They won't even know if Brazil's in South America or Central America. They wouldn't know. And this is the problem. These are our future leaders. They have to be re-educated. In essence, they aren't ready to assume leadership role in Africa. This benefits the colonial powers. And this is by design. The West wants our governments to continue this path here. Don't educate your youth. They want this path to continue. And we have to do something to educate our young people so they'll be ready for the modern world. And it's going to happen because we're going to bring forth people, and they're going to come forth, and they're and they will in time. take over. We know that because our Prophet has said that. Now, if there's an invasion, a France invasion, U.S. invasion, no, boy, I don't know what happened today with these notes. That, when you write in the computer, sometimes it changes the sentence. I didn't catch it. If there's the U.S. invasion and with French, the French and U.S. invade Niger, and they coordinate this attack against the junta there in Niger, the ramifications of this particular attack would further weaken U.S. and French position in the Sahel in particular. It would weaken it. And I'm going to tell you why. The United States and France, Africa is yours no more. The U.S. and France, listen up. Africa is yours no more. It's not yours anymore. We having wholesale rebellion against you. We don't want to see you. We don't want you around us. Our leaders are forced to deal with you, and you don't deal with us equally. And we're tired. We have 400 years of this madness coming from you. Slavery, overthrowing governments, killing our leaders, all this time. We're tired. Africa is fighting you now. And because of the 400 years of atrocities, 12 million Africans taken out of West Africa. And West Africa today is still depopulated. You have perpetrated horrendous crimes against Africa. You can't kill enough. And now, if you start to kill, you're gonna have to do some serious out and out killing, and it's not going to work. Even though you may kill a couple leaders here and there, somebody's going to replace them, because Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is now starting to put things in their heart to fight against you. Yes, you have the weapon, the military madness from the sky to drop horrendous bombs on us and kill everybody, but you also kill the resources. And Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is not going to allow this. He won't allow this. When you come to attack, you're going to now get a whole unison of people to come after you. And you have seen in the centuries past, even the brothers had bows and arrows and muskets. They held off European powers who had modern weaponry at that time. The brothers of Mali, Burkina Faso, the Fulani, the Hausa, the Bambara, the Afro-Tuareg, the Afro-Arab, wholesale other Africans will fight you, United States and France. And American and French soldiers will die in this invasion if they come to Niger. Even if they drop in the bombs, there's things that are going to happen. Because there's things that's going on inside the earth, in the world and outside of it, in space. There's things happening. I won't get deeper to the outer realms of the world, but there's things that's happening. And we start to uncover things. If you look at some of the things of the hieroglyphics in Egypt and the Book of the Dead, every person should read that for your edification, understand your black brothers of Egypt, and they were black. And when you read the Book of the Dead, you will find that you in there how they talked about themselves in there. They did not describe themselves as white. That's Tuba. Because when they described the Greeks and the Romans, they described them in such a way. So that it's like me talking about a Tuba, right? Because I'm making the distinction between me and a Tuba. They made that distinction between them and the Tuba. But when they talked about, Ethiopia, as we understand today, what at that time was called Nubia, because Nubia was Sudan and Ethiopia and Eritrea, all these areas there, they know they did not make a distinction. They called it a different name because that's where these people were from. But they did not make a distinction between them. But they made the distinction between the Greeks and the Romans. See, the Book of the Dead, you should read it for your education to understand other Black people and their histories, especially in Egypt, because it's a contention that all West Africans, which I believe originated out of Egypt. Because we look at things in Ghana, there's a chair. If I'm trying to remember now, there's a chair that was brought from Egypt, and they keep that quiet a lot. But it was a chair brought over from Egypt, and I can't remember all the significance to that, but it is. We have Hebrews that are in Nigeria. Where did they originate come from? Out from what? Egypt. We have linguists, especially African brothers, and I've talked about this on other shows. Let's see if I can find it. You should read. You should pick up the scholarship of your African brothers, because this is important to do this, to have these type of things here. The Africans who wrote the Bible. This brother here, if he's still alive, I have not talked to him now over about 20 years now. But this brother here made a point, and he describes many things, and you should pick up this book and read it. Now you can get it online. I'm not sure how you get it now. This is an old original copy that I got from him. And his name here is at the bottom here is Nana. And I don't know if he's still alive or not, but he got a lot of heat for this book. But here he describes in Egypt, he describes the languages that were spoken. The West Africans, the Fulani, the Hausa, all of us originated out of Egypt, according to our brother here. And he explains the linguistics. He explains how the languages was changed and how the old ancient Egyptian language is related to many of the languages that we speak today. Ga, Asante, Fante, many different languages, the Fulani, all these type of things is related, brothers and sisters. So if you can pick up that book, you do so, because you should have a well-rounded education when it comes to Africa. So when the Tubab begins to dissect you and put you down, you'll be able to talk about that. When he claims that Egypt and Habasha or Ethiopia is theirs, it's a lie. Because let's get into that, and I'll stop on this. When Herodias, who's a white man, a Tubab, he came 440 years before Jesus ﷺ was born. He described the region of Egypt and Nubia as what? He called Ethiop, meaning, because they had no name for Black people, so they called them burnt by the sun. That's how you got the country Ethiopia. It's from the Greeks, because when they saw us, when they came, they saw us, they didn't know how to describe us. So they used the Greek name Ethiop, meaning burnt by the sun. This is what they talked about in Egypt. So the modern Egyptians who are white are screaming at African Americans because there's a lot of banter going on between two. No, Egypt, the original Egypt, they were white, all that because they drew the pictures to make them white. But you have the test by Sheikh Diop, member of our famous ancestral or scholar, linguistic, geneticist. Our brother went to Egypt and he developed a melon test. Very interesting. And that test is precise. He took the mummies of the Tubab, the Greeks and Romans, and it gave a number about the melon, because Europeans don't produce much melon. Africans produce a lot of melon, right? So he produced these tests. When he began to test the mummies, he found these over here had very low numbers. He knew them to be Europeans, okay? But the Africans they found in the tombs, some of the kings they call pharaohs and so forth and so on, had high numbers. That means their melon was high. High melon means what? You have to be Black. Herodias described 400 years before Jesus that what? That the Egyptians were Black folk. He described them. He called them black in color, Ethiop in the Greek language. He described their noses and their lips and their hair. Those are Black men. Those are not Tubab. See, so I'm maybe straying a little bit, but I'm trying to give you something for you to understand our history in Africa, how it's being stolen. Our wealth is being stolen. Our history has been stolen and maligned and changed around. So this is important for us, brothers and sisters, that we start to control our narratives. And this is why I keep talking to the youth, get your education. Go back and hit the books. Go back to the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and you'll get rewarded for it. But this point here, brothers, I'm going back to this now. The Americans and the French decide to attack. They're going to have a hell of a time there. Yes, they'll be able to drop bombs and stuff like this. But now you have a unison of brothers who want to fight back. Not only the people from Niger, but you got brothers now, Mali, Burkina Faso, and whatnot. And not only that, they're going to contend with the Mujahideen groups who they've had years to fight, and they haven't been able to take them out. See? And so their reign is slowly going away. That's why I said to the Americans now, Africa's yours no more. It's finished. Yes, you can come and threaten the Kenyans. You can threaten Uganda and tell the president of Uganda. You can tell the president of Ghana, you will accept homosexuality. Brothers and sisters, you should see for them for what they are. It'll be an unjust war. It'll be a colonization. And they will take place. This, we want them out. Your position in Niger saga, you should be demure. Now, the Americans should stay out of this, and the French stay out of it. Because if they enter the fray, they're going to cause a whole regional change. And Americans don't have the manpower, because they're going to have to now conquer all of this and recolonize this. And I don't think they have the will to do it. And the American government as a whole will not stand for it, because they have enough problems at home. And you think about what's going on at home there in the United States. When you find cocaine in the White House, you tell me what's going on in the United States. You find cocaine inside the White House. You tell me what's going on. And you have another one who was the president beforehand, and what he called Africa, and then what he was doing and so forth. He woke up all of the new racists and so forth and so on and whatnot. So, America is on the downfall, and it would love perhaps to come in to do things inside Africa. But at this time, they got so many problems. They're so weakened. I don't know how they'll be able to do it. And the Sahel is not easy to take. And I don't believe the American public would support such a war, because they will send their sons here to fight. And how about the black folk there inside the United States? They're going to be asked to come here to kill their brothers. For what reason? See? If they did come in here, it'll be a place where there'll be a lot of attacks on them, especially in the Sahel, especially in the Sahara, and so forth and so on. It'd be very difficult. And I believe also when they try to recolonize, they're going to send all of their deviant American citizens here. And I believe that the Africans will start to kill them. I really believe that. So the best thing for the American government, France, to do right now in Niger is to look at it, but stay out of it. Because if you enter the fray, you're going to have a lot of repercussions, and you're not going to want to deal with that. Putin has already warned the West to stay out. So, it looks like it's going to be a very, very, we have to wait how this is going to be. The Sahel is not welcoming to the Tubab and their Moors anymore. They're forced to have to welcome them, and they're forced to have to deal with them. But they don't like what they're doing, because you see now even the cool leaders are very adamant about their distrust and their dislike, especially for the Americans and the French. They're more inclined, if they're going to deal with any Tubab, they're going to deal with the Russians. They don't want to deal with the Americans, because they know the Americans to be untrustworthy, and they have been for 400 years. And speaking of that, the Americans should be paying reparations to Africa for what it has done. But the new bill that the Americans have proposed to sanction us, in this bill, they're talking about paying families who have suffered from the from the Wagner group, which we talked about in Mali and in Burkina Faso. We talked about that, the massacres that have happened. But that's a Band-Aid. How about the 12 million that you took out of Africa? And the American government still refused to give the African American apologies for the slavery. They refuse, but they give reparations for the Japanese and others, and the Indians, and they give cursory apologies for those who they have harmed, but not the black man. See, so this is a very interesting thing. And when they do come to start to take over, you look at North Africa in particular, you start to see something that's arise. When you see the American government, and we have to say it for what it is, when they begin to come in and take a foothold, suddenly disbelief begins to open up. Because the American position is not to sanctify, it's not to strengthen Islam or to strengthen your way of life, it's to bring your way of life down. And this is what we see, especially in North Africa. You look, the way of life is going steadily down. The disbelief in Subhanahu wa ta'ala is going down. They back that. They encourage that. They protect that. That's why they go after the strong Muslims. They try to go after the scholars and the intellectuals and keep them inside their houses, because they don't want the people to come back to Islam. Sexual misconduct begins to take place. They start to put in leaders who now back the play of the Americans and the French and the Europeans by opening up the sexual market. See, this is what they also, when they begin to take control, and the intrigue, racism begins to come in, where they begin to take the lighter skinned population and begin to feed them with BS. Okay, that they somehow or another they are superior, and they begin to introduce things to them. They start to look at their darker skins Moroccans. They start to look at the darker skins Algerians, the Tunisians, the Libyans, the Egyptians, and they begin to have problems. And when you clear the smoke, you'll find a two-bob American instrumental in it. Let's talk it for what it is. Racism is big. They want to introduce even, the racial profiling if they can. That's why they don't want to see the black man from America and the West Indies in North Africa appear, because they want to institute some type where the police will go after these people who are black. This is why I say to you, Africa is not yours no more, Americans. It is not. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is starting to bring forth people, and now even our religious leaders are starting to talk. They're not fully compliant yet, but they're starting to get there. Religious suppression reigns supreme. Our strongest, our leaders are not, their voices are now suppressed. And this is what happens when the Americans begin to take hold in particular. Nobody here on this continent can come and say that the Americans are not racist. They are, because Africans who live there say that. They come back home and they tell you, many now are writing saying, don't go there. See, so we have to talk it for what it is and talk the truth. The best of us, my brothers and sisters, the best of us, like this here. If you go to North Africa and many other African states, the best of us are scholars and intellectuals like this. They're in their houses. They are arrested. They're told to shut up. they're followed, they're investigated, they're spied upon, they're harassed, they're terrorized. This is all under the American quote unquote terror program. The best of us are maligned and lied upon by this enemy, made to be terrorists. These brothers here, according to the index of the American index, these are terrorists. But the worst of us, criminals, mafia figures, muharaba, hypocrites who steal, rob, steal from the wealth of the people, fornicators, these ones are put into power. And when they're put into power, they protect them so they can further corrupt the countries. This corruption is protected. The way of life that we understand is stymied. We have so much poorness now because the democratic ways and means. We have people who eat out of trash. We have people all over Africa who still living in the 17th century. We have the introduction of the Dajjal as well. And this is you know him in the Bible as the Antichrist. And his introduction has been going steady there for a number of years. And those things that I've talked about, corruption, whoredom, homosexuality, all this is coming under the way of the Dajjal, who it will be coming when Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, when it's time, it's gonna happen. We know it's shortly. We know this. Okay, now I'm about ready to get ready to close here, brothers and sisters. I know these type of talks perhaps are not to the liking of many people, and I understand that. And many people want entertainment. I understand that as well. But we're living in a time now where we have to have conversations. And we Africans are always misfed, misdirected, misled, misinformed by our enemies outside of Africa. And the media has twisted us to believing that Africans, we should hate one another. And this is a problem. And this has to change. So we do have some people who are hungry for knowledge, hungry for history, hungry to get the truth. They can't find it. They go to YouTube, they go to Facebook, they just cannot find it. So I tried to do the best I can to fill that gap. I won't get 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 views like some of the pundits. They have, thousands and thousands of views and so forth like this. I won't get that. But I'll try my best to please Subhanahu wa Ta'ala by promoting his sunnah among us. See, so brothers and sisters, this is it in a nutshell. And I want you to understand the significance of this. This man is supposed to be allegedly dead. The Russian Wagner group head supposed to have died in a plane crash, and now there's a lot of speculation. Again, it's speculation because they have not proven that this is an inside job, basically some kind of treachery that killed him. But again, that's there in Russia. We do not know exactly what's going on. There's a lot of intelligence reports saying that it was a setup and that it was blown out of the sky. I don't know. Perhaps we may not never know. I don't know. But we know that he's supposed to be dead. We understand that. We know that the ECOWAS, they did come, and finally we understand as well that they were not greeted wholeheartedly. And a matter of fact, they said that they would not accept the proposal that the Niger coup leaders had gave them. So now we wait to see what ECOWAS is going to do, because ECOWAS cannot do anything without the say so of the Americans, because they need the Americans to back them up militarily and with also funds. So we'll see how that's going to transform itself here, inshallah. Our brothers here, I'm hoping that they stay involved, and I hope that the president of Nigeria seeks their counsel. And I'm hoping the brothers in Niger seek the counsel of our ulama as well, because you'll get it straight from them. They will give you the answers, and they'll talk from the Quran and the Sunnah, which is a breath of fresh air, because you'll get people who are straightforward, and you know they have a covenant with Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. See, so we need to have that. We need to have more fellowship like this, where we have black brothers coming from around the Sahel to meet in Niger, to talk to the Niger, and to talk to ECOWAS. ECOWAS leadership, as a general rule, may not be they may not be hospitable to our scholars. They're more hospitable to the Tubab. They talk with them on a regular basis. They deal with them on a regular basis. I'm not talking about all of ECOWAS, but I'm saying a great majority of them don't want to see, they are involved in suppressing the scholars. So they don't want to see them. They rather talk with the Tubab, but not with our scholars, which is a very, 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 very horrendous mistake. The Niger former president is Afro-Arab. You say, well, what difference does that make? It makes a big difference, because he was the first one ever voted in power. So we know that the man who overthrowed him is what? Hausa. He has a strong backing in Nigeria, especially northern Nigeria. As you heard me say 1,000 times, you have to have a playbook. You need to understand the ethnic loyalties everywhere through Africa, especially the Sahel, and in places like Sudan as well, and Chad as well. You need to have his playbook to understand there's a correlation to this. He's Afro-Arab, and he was overthrown by a Hausa brother. See, so those dynamics are also in this, and so we're gonna have to wait and see what's going to happen through this. And you heard me talk about last week, our brother here from ECOWAS. He's he's the commissioner. He gave a good talk about what's going on in Niger, but he's got it right to a degree. But again, he doesn't have, and he doesn't want to have a relationship with our brothers here, because he has an opinion about the Muslims that none of us are worthy, that we're all criminals of some sort. Because he's made a point to say that the problems that are facing in the region are the problems because of people like this, in the Muslims. He doesn't say the problems the Tubab has caused, the Tubab French, and the Americans have caused. He doesn't talk about that. He talks about the Muslims and being terrorists. That's the problems that's central to Niger and the corridors of the Sahel, which is erroneous for him to say that. Our brother here, the ex-president, gave away 95% of the wealth of Niger. 5% of it went to the public. I mean, and Niger is the second poorest nation in the world. And he gave away 95% of that, of the wealth. And there was also other things going on as far as security goes. And they felt that he was not handling it. And so that is a big problem, brothers and sisters. You know, and the the uh, the the Niger new government is already have one foot of being overthrown because it's, as you heard me talk about last week, the trained U.S. trained military officers were now put into power inside Niger. I don't know how the Niger new government can allow for U.S. trained military officers to take key jobs in it, because they're going to be reporting to the Americans, and Americans are already threatening to invade. So who do you think their loyalty is to? This is why I said they should go to the Sharia law, stop all of this stuff. Then they would have, and they start to incorporate the ulama fuqaha involved in this. We can get other religious leaders from throughout the Sahel to come to mediate, because this is important. And they need to get good counsel before they act, because when they deal with the Russians, it's going to be very difficult. The Russians are more clear and more forthcoming than the Tubab Western governments, yes, but still they're Tubab and they're not Muslims. So we have to be very, very cognizant of that. They were talking, the BBC was talking here in an article, talking about the coups in Africa. And it was saying that many have now, experts are saying that democracy is gone. I don't think it is in this sense, because they're still pushing it. Our brother here, our famous brother here, who showed out in Russia at the African conference there in Russia, he is talking very tough. He came straight out and said he's going to back his brother in Niger. We know that. He said this. He's talking straight. He doesn't want no more colonization. He wants the French out. He wants the Americans out. So we're starting to see many different things on the African continent, especially in the Sahel. We're starting to have examples that perhaps we can lead to help the rest of Africa become free. Because these brothers here don't want them. Yes, I don't like their Islamic stance. I don't like their Islamic stance. You heard me talk about that. But they do have potential. And I want to see these brothers grow. And I need the right Africans around them to help them. And the right Africans around them have to be people like this. You have to have the ulama and the fuqaha around them, because they will give them the guidance. Because these people, they pray to Subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they have that covenant with Subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these leaders should have the ulama and fuqaha around them to give them guidance and help these leaders, help to bring them back to Subhanahu wa ta'ala in his way. Our brother in Niger, he is Hausa. He's got plenty of Fulani there as well. We're cousins, full-fledged cousins. We're intermixed a lot. They should be also aligning themselves inside Niger, because yes, we have Asabiya. It's wrong in Islam, but even we do know it's wrong, but it's still playing out. The Tuareg and the Arabs are a unit in itself. So the Hausa brothers should go back to align themselves with the Fulani inside of it and create their own bloc in order to survive. And again, they'll be able to get this type of counsel from things like this. And I want to see our brother there, the new president of Niger. I want to see him start to rely on his Nigerian brothers, the scholars and so forth, to help him into making good, sound moves. And what do they do about their ex-president? Don't kill him. Don't imprison him either. Even though he's wayward and that he gave away the wealth, I wouldn't try him and put him in court because it's not right. We don't have a Sharia court. It's wrong. So you put him under house arrest. Let me tell you this, and I'll close, brothers and sisters. Let me give you an example. The Murabitun, if anybody knows about them, this is the famous Mujahideen group. I talked about them a lot of times that took over Al-Maghrib. Where did they originate out from? They originated out of Mauritania. That's right. They were black. And they came in and kicked butt, and they took over the northern tier of where, understand Morocco today and Algeria, because it was broken up. The French, and they broke it up to Algeria. There was no such thing as Algeria in the past. It was all Al-Maghrib. The Murabitun had a problem in modern day Spain, which they call Andalus. That Andalusian, the main power broker in the fiefdoms that was going there is the same like this man. He began to give his wealth away to the Spanish in order to stay in power. He began to allow corruption in his land. He allowed the Tubab, what we call Ifringe in Arabic, the Europeans to come inside Andalus and to wreak havoc inside the Islamic State. When Murabitun came and took over, they didn't kill him. They didn't prosecute him. What they did, they exiled him to a degree, and they saved his life, and they gave him subsidies so he can live his life. But he could not return to power. This is what our brother in Niger should do with the ex-president Bazoum. He should do the same thing. We have enough examples that our brothers, how they ruled in the past. You've been hearing me talk about that. You can go back to the 13th century if you want, and you can find our brother Fulani brothers, House of Brothers, you Bambara brothers. The Sanhaja people who I'm from, also who are Sanhaja, are basically Amazigh Fulani. You can look how they ruled, and we have examples how they handled rulers like this. See, so this is all the things that I'm advocating that our new leader in Niger should be doing. He should go back to the past. He should look to see how the Messina group ruled in this region. And even better yet, we're very close to the Wassoulou Empire of Samari Touré. How did he rule? He ruled under the Sharia. But how did he rule in things like this? See, so all of these things, I'm putting them out to you because I'm giving you examples what I think should be done. And I'm hoping and praying that they do follow suit with that. Because we should be sitting at the table like this, discussing this with the military juntas that are popping up all over the West Africa. And they're going to have to go and sit down with our ulama and fuqaha in time in order to get this right. In order for this for them to govern correctly, they need to go to our brothers, the ulama in their countries, or get a body of ulama from different places to come to talk to them, to help them to govern, so they can make the right moves and move towards Sharia law. So we'll see here, inshallah ta'ala, and I'll be closing here, brothers and sisters. And until the next time, I hope you keep these thoughts. And if you do like this type of talk, please subscribe to me, brothers and sisters, and hit the like button. I appreciate it. You never hear me ever ask for any money. I don't believe in that. It's wrong. I don't like to do that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed me with the income. Alhamdulillah for that. But I do need your support. And I hope that support comes in the way of you subscribing and passing along my tapes, and also thinking about things that I said, the educational, the historical documentations, and so forth and so on. And I'm giving you a straight out analysis from the ground, not the stuff you get from the Western press. I'm giving you things from a Muslim standpoint, from an African standpoint. See, this is important. You're getting it from your brother. And this is important that we do get our news all the time from our own people, because they see the things the way they really are. So, okay, my brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.